city has corners it doesn't want you to see. And in one of those corners, a girl just opened her eyes. Not because she rested well, but because life doesn't wait for mercy where she comes from. She doesn't know it yet, but today will start like every other, and end like nothing the world could have prepared for. Makoko is about to speak. The rooster in Makoko hadn't even crowed before Joanna's eyes flew open. It wasn't a dream that woke her. It was the weight of another day. A heaviness sat on her small chest, the kind that didn't come from sleep, but from knowing exactly what the morning held. Her body, thin and already too grown for 18 years of age, moved with the knowledge of routine. She wrapped her faded scarf around her shoulders, feeling the morning chill bite through the threadbare fabric. The cracked cement floor felt like ice against her bare feet as she stepped outside the one-room house. It was still dark, the kind of darkness that whispered, "Not yet," but Joanna knew better. In this house, in this world, mercy did not sleep in. The broom in the corner had only half its bristles left. Still, she picked it up like a soldier lifting a weapon and began sweeping the compound. The dust rose up like ghosts from yesterday, curling around her ankles, her knees, her face. Joanna didn't flinch. She had learned not to mind the sting. "Joanna!" The shriek came from inside the house. It was Grace, her stepmother, already up and already angry. "Did you put water on the fire for Pap, or you want all of us to drink air today?" Joanna dropped the broom and rushed to the kitchen. The firewood was still damp from last night's rain, and she had to blow hard into the embers, her eyes stinging with smoke. She set the kettle on top and fanned the flames with a cracked plastic plate. Grace stood at the kitchen doorway, arms folded across her chest, wrapper tied just above her chest, lips curled like a knife. "You think this is a hotel, ABI? You want to kill me the way your mother died, right? Which?" Joanna didn't answer. She had learned not to. Words were traps in this house. She stirred the pap without speaking, without looking up. The air thickened with silence. "Go and kneel under the sun when you finish. I don't want to hear one cough or sneeze from you today. If I do, you'll sleep outside." She nodded and took the kettle off the fire. By the time the sun stretched across the sky, Joanna had fetched 2 buckets of water from the community tap, arranged the firewood, cleaned the bathroom, and laid out the wrappers to dry. Her arms ached, but she kept moving. Her father, Festus, sat outside under the mango tree, peeling boiled groundnuts slowly. He didn't look at her. He never did. Since her mother passed, he had buried himself in silence and guilt, letting Grace's cruelty take root like weed. "Good morning, Daddy," Joanna said, voice soft. Festus nodded once without raising his head. Joanna carried on. That evening, Joanna sat alone in the corner of the room that used to be her mother's. She pulled out her most prized possession, a worn photo. It was of a smiling woman holding a baby, and beside her stood a man who almost looked like Festus, only younger and warmer. Joanna stared at it long. "Mama, did you know I would end up like this? Why didn't you take me with you?" Just then, Grace barged in. "What are you doing with that nonsense photo again? Do you want the devil to follow you in your sleep?" Joanna quickly folded it and hid it under her wrapper. "You better pray someone buys you soon. I'm tired of feeding a mouth that brings me no blessing." The words stung more than the slap that followed them. The next morning, Joanna nearly collapsed while returning from the tap. The sun was high, and her knees buckled under the weight of the buckets. But she made it home, soaked in sweat and silence. "You're walking like a pregnant goat," Grace scoffed. "What is wrong with you now?" Joanna shook her head. "I'm fine." "You better be. Because if you die here, I'll bury you behind the latrine." Which? That night, after everyone had eaten and she had washed the plates, Grace pulled Joanna aside. Festus was nodding off in his chair. "Pack your things. Joanna blinked. "Ma, I said pack your things. Tomorrow morning, someone from Lecky is coming for you. They paid already. You'll be working in their house. Don't come back here." Joanna stared at her. "Please, Ma. I will behave. I will." "Shut up. You should be thanking me. You're going to the city. Big house. Good food. Maybe your witchcraft will reduce there." Joanna went into the room and packed her entire life into a small nylon bag. 2 skirts, 1 blouse, a church scarf, and her mother's photo. She held it to her chest. Nobody hugged her. Nobody prayed for her. The next morning, a black SUV rolled into the street like a shark among minnows. A man in a suit stepped out and called her name. Grace smiled like a cat that just finished a bowl of milk. "Bye-bye, witch. Safe journey to your coven." Joanna climbed into the car without looking back. As it pulled away, she kept her eyes on the window, watching Makoko fade. And somewhere deep in her heart, a voice whispered, "This is not the end." It was just the beginning. The air in Lecky was nothing like Makoko. It didn't carry smoke, gutter water, or the hum of tired generators. Here, it smelt like air freshener and new wealth. Joanna sat stiffly in the back of a black Prado SUV, her nylon bag clutched tightly to her chest. Her eyes stayed low, scanning the moving lines of the road as though watching a movie she wasn't part of. The woman beside the driver didn't say a word. Vashti, they had called her, long wig, sharp perfume, voice like cold tiles. The driver, too, said nothing. They simply rode in silence, tires gliding past mansions, billboards, glass buildings, and rows of palm trees swaying like rich women's hips. Joanna had never been in a car before. Her body vibrated with each bump, but she didn't flinch. She just held her mother's photo tighter. After what felt like an hour of driving, the car turned off the expressway into a quiet gated estate. The houses here weren't just big, they were silent. Their windows had secrets. Their gates looked like judgment. The SUV stopped before a cream-colored mansion with 2 floors, arched glass windows, and a compound that could fit her entire street back in Makoko. Vashti finally turned and spoke, her voice clipped. "Carry your bag. Don't drag your feet." Joanna obeyed. She stepped out slowly, her eyes darting from the marble steps to the shiny metal door. She wondered if her slippers were too loud for this floor. The door opened from inside. A man stood there, tall, dark-skinned, with a belly that suggested comfort. His voice was as smooth as his cologne. "You brought the girl?" "Obviously," Vashti said, brushing past Joanna and walking inside. Joanna followed, unsure if she should remove her slippers or crawl. The house swallowed her whole, polished floors, velvet chairs, chandeliers dripping from the ceiling like frozen sunlight. She tried not to stare, but her eyes betrayed her. This place didn't look like home. It looked like heaven without God. The man, Mr. Richard Carter, turned to Joanna with a faint smile. "Not warm. Not cruel. Just business. You'll be working here now," he said. "You're to stay quiet, move fast, and do what you're told." "Yes, sir." "You will not ask questions. You will not touch what you're not sent to touch. You'll eat when we tell you. And if anything goes missing, we'll know." "Yes, sir." "Good." Vashti returned with a maid, tall, slim, wearing a black uniform with a white collar. She looked like someone permanently tired of life. "Blessing, take her to the back quarters," Vashti said. "She starts tomorrow. But show her the room." Blessing's eyes flicked toward Joanna, then toward Vashti. "The room? Just, she'll be cleaning it from now on. I'm tired of seeing dust around that door." Blessing hesitated, then nodded. "Follow me." Joanna obeyed, her bag swinging against her side. They passed the kitchen, a corridor lined with family portraits, and finally reached a hallway at the far end of the house. The walls here looked older, less shiny, almost forgotten. Blessing stopped in front of a wide white door with bronze handles. "This is her room," she said quietly. "The madam." Joanna tilted her head. "Madam?" Blessing leaned close and whispered, "Madam Evelyn. She's Mr. Richard's mother. She used to own everything. Big woman. But now, they say her head isn't correct." Joanna blinked. "She stays locked in this room. She doesn't come out. No one goes in unless sent. Don't talk to her too much. Don't ask her anything. Just sweep, dust, and leave." She opened the door just a crack. Joanna peeked in. The room was dim. Heavy curtains swallowed sunlight. The air smelled faintly of talcum powder and something else. Oldness, maybe. An elegant bed sat in the center, covered in cream sheets. A figure lay there, unmoving. Joanna caught a glimpse of silver hair, thin hands resting on the blanket. The woman didn't look mad. She looked quiet, like a memory nobody visited anymore. "Come," Blessing said sharply. "You've seen it." They walked away. That night, in the small servant room at the back of the house, Joanna lay on her thin mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling. She placed her mother's photo beside her pillow and whispered, "I don't know what I'm doing here, Mama, but I will try." Joanna woke before the bell rang. Her body still operated on Makoko time. She swept the compound in silence. The mansion was still asleep. By the time she reached the main hallway, Vashti was already in the kitchen, sipping tea. "You'll clean Madame Evelyn's room today," she said without looking up. "Don't touch anything. Don't talk to her. Just clean." Joanna nodded. She carried a bowl of warm water, a towel, and a small dusting rack. Her hand trembled slightly as she opened the heavy door. The room was still dim, though the morning sun tried to slip through the curtain edges. Joanna tiptoed in and set the bowl down. She glanced at the bed. The old woman was awake. Mrs. Evelyn Carter lay on her side, eyes half open, lips moving slightly as if chewing invisible words. Joanna curtsied softly. "Good morning, Ma." No response. She moved to the windows and gently opened the curtain halfway. The light stretched across the floor like a blessing. Then, slowly, she approached the bed. Evelyn's eyes blinked slowly, following her. There was something behind those eyes. Not madness. Something else. Joanna dipped the cloth in warm water and gently wiped Evelyn's hand. It was light as air. She spoke softly as she worked, more to herself than to the woman. "My mama used to rub my hands like this when I was sick," she said. She said, "Clean hands make clean dreams." Still no response. She dusted the bedside table. On it were a stack of untouched pills, a framed photo face down, and a dried flower in a glass. As she turned to sweep the corners of the room, something caught her eye, a glint of light from beneath the bed. Joanna bent slightly and saw it. A thin silver chain, tangled with dust, almost hidden. She reached for it carefully and pulled it out. At the end of the chain was a tiny photo pendant. Inside, a picture of a man and a smiling baby girl. Joanna stared. The man looked like someone in her own family photo. Her breath caught. She turned to Evelyn. For the first time, the old woman blinked twice. Her lips moved. "Daniel?" Joanna froze. "Ma." Evelyn stared at the pendant, then at Joanna. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Look like her." Joanna stepped back slightly. Her heart thudded. "I'll clean the window now," she mumbled. Evelyn blinked again, sharper this time. Joanna finished cleaning in silence and left the room. But in her chest, something had shifted. The pendant now rested deep inside her wrapper. She didn't know why she took it, but something told her it belonged to her too. By evening, Richard stood by the main hallway, phone in hand. "Has she cleaned the room?" he asked Vashti. She has, Vashti said. Why? Richard frowned. Mama said something strange today when I passed by. She asked for a girl with eyes like glass. Vashti scoffed. She's delusional. Ignore her. Richard nodded. Still, keep an eye on that girl. In her servant quarters, Joanna lay on her back. She stared at the pendant under the lamplight. The man's face looked oddly familiar. And the baby? Something about the smile. She turned over and whispered to the photo beside her pillow, Mama, did you hide something from me? Outside, Lagos lights flickered in the distance. The mansion rested, but something inside it had awakened. The mornings in Lekki were soft. Sunlight didn't crash in like it did back in Makoko. It slipped between cream-colored blinds and touched the marble like it was asking permission. Joanna was beginning to understand the rhythm of the Carter mansion. The staff didn't talk much unless they were whispering. Madame Vashti was always in silk. Mr. Richard smelled like cologne and secrets. Blessing the housemaid walked like her feet were tired of carrying truth she couldn't say. Joanna's own rhythm hadn't changed. She woke at 4:30 a.m., swept in silence, tied her scarf tight, and checked her wrapper for the chain she had found in Evelyn Carter's room. She hadn't shown it to anyone, not even the other servants. Something in her said, this belongs to me, even if I don't know why. That morning, she carried the bowl of warm water into Evelyn's room again. The older woman was awake this time, sitting slightly higher in bed, her head turned toward the curtain. Joanna approached gently. Good morning, Ma, she said. Evelyn didn't speak. Her gaze was fixed on the light coming through the curtain. Joanna dipped the towel and began to clean her hands. Evelyn's skin was still fragile, but not as cold anymore. You slept well? Joanna asked. The pause. My dreams were loud. Joanna almost dropped the towel. She looked up. Evelyn blinked slowly. I saw trees. And a girl in yellow. Joanna said nothing. I haven't dreamed in weeks, Evelyn whispered. Or maybe months. The medicine makes it all quiet. Joanna tilted her head. You don't like the medicine? Evelyn looked at her. Do you? Joanna couldn't answer. She changed the subject. I found this yesterday, she said, pulling out the silver chain and pendant. It was under your bed. Evelyn gasped, not a loud sound but sharp. Her hand trembled. Joanna opened the pendant and placed it in her palm. Inside, the image of Daniel Carter, younger, smiling in a white shirt, holding a baby girl. Evelyn's fingers traced the photo like it was fragile glass. I gave this to him, she murmured, the day he came to tell me about the girls. Joanna's heart fluttered. Girls? Evelyn nodded slowly. Twins. He said he and his wife, Amelia, had been praying for one child, and God gave them two. Joanna's breath caught. The day they died, Evelyn whispered, the police said only ashes remained. The fire in the car was too strong. No bodies. But I never saw a body. Not even the child's bracelet. Joanna touched her chest. The photo she carried in her wrapper, the one she had held since she could remember, showed her as a baby held between her mother and a man she had never known. Until now, she'd assumed it was just a regular photo. But what if it wasn't? Evelyn's voice became stronger, almost like someone rising from underwater. You said your name is Joanna? Yes, Ma. My son wanted to name his first daughter Joanna, she said, staring at the ceiling. He said it sounded like hope and strength mixed together. Joanna's lips trembled. That's what they called me. Who? The woman who raised me. She said God gave me to her in the forest. Evelyn's breathing deepened. What forest? Joanna hesitated. I don't know the name. I was very small. But I heard my stepmother say they found me under a tree near a village road. Evelyn's mouth dropped open. Amelia was driving that night, through a quiet route. My son told me it was safer than the expressway. There was heavy rain, trees everywhere. She looked at Joanna, her eyes now wide. They lied to me. Joanna stepped back. I was told everyone died, Evelyn said slowly. No investigation. No ashes. Just paperwork. And then suddenly, my medication changed. My room was moved. I was told not to stress. Joanna realized she was shaking. I don't know who I am, she whispered. Evelyn looked at her, truly looked. I don't know either, she replied. But I think God just opened a door. Later that day, Joanna sat in the servant quarters, staring at the two photos in her lap. 1. The photo in the pendant, Daniel and the baby. 2. Her own childhood photo, her and her mother in the village, faded, but now clearly showing the same baby. Same forehead, same eyes. She felt as though the floor beneath her was shifting. Everything she thought she knew, her name, her parents, her life in Makoko, suddenly seemed like the wrong script handed to the right actor. That evening, Evelyn refused to take her sleeping pills. When Vashti came in with the tray, she waved it off. I'm not tired, she said. Vashti stiffened. But doctor said... I said I'm not tired. Vashti nodded slowly, eyes cold, and turned away. When she left, Evelyn pressed the call bell twice. Joanna entered moments later. I need you to do something for me, Evelyn said. Yes, Ma. Go into the old study on the second floor. There's a drawer under the big oak desk. Bring me the black file you find there. Don't let anyone see you. Joanna nodded. The study was quiet, covered in dust. The wood smelled like secrets. She opened the drawer, and there it was. A large black file, labeled Daniel's Private. Inside were letters. Photos of a house under construction in Makoko. Receipts for baby things. A birth certificate. And a note. If anything happens to us, take care of Joanna. If she survives, she's the key to everything. Joanna held the note close to her chest. The room spun. Her legs weakened. She was not a mistake. She was not a witch. She was not forgotten. She was the daughter of Daniel Carter. Meanwhile, Richard and Vashti sat in the private lounge, sipping wine. She's talking again, Richard said. Too much. Vashti smiled. We'll adjust the dose. I don't like it. And the new maid, she's too quiet. Reminds me of someone. You're paranoid. No. I'm listening to my spirit. Evelyn knows something. Vashti tilted her glass, eyes hardening. Then we need to make her forget again. In the servant quarters, Joanna lay with both photos under her pillow. She could no longer sleep. Her blood was fire now. Oberlin didn't sleep. The air stayed heavy with exhaust fumes, grilled meat smoke, and distant shouting. Between the yellow buses and men hawking torchlights in traffic, survival was loud here. It roared from loudspeakers, shouted from bus conductors, and bled through concrete in the form of ambition and despair. And Jane had learned to survive it all. She had no last name, no family, only the name tattooed on her shoulder, Jane, and the sharpness in her voice that kept boys twice her size from stealing her bread. At just 10 years old, Jane was a street queen. Fast hands, faster feet, tongue like fire. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She moved with the kind of confidence only those with nothing left to lose could carry. But even queens fall. One night, during a police sweep targeting a syndicate that used minors for petty crimes, Jane was cornered near Anakin Bridge. She tried to outrun the officers, darted between buses, slid under stalls. But one officer caught her scarf, and she fell hard. At the station, they took her photo. She spat at the camera. But the photo didn't disappear into dusty records. It was posted on a local blog the next morning, titled, "10-year-old street girl caught with syndicate, claims she has no family." The photo was scrolling on a maid's phone in the Carter kitchen when Evelyn entered quietly. The maid didn't notice her at first. She was laughing with another staff member. "Look at this girl," she said. "She even has tattoo. Imagine." Evelyn leaned forward. "Let me see." The maid flinched. "Sorry, Ma, I didn't mean." "Show me." Evelyn took the phone. Her eyes locked on the screen. She froze. The maid girl had wild eyes. Hair in a tangled puff. Scratched. Dirt on her collarbone. But the face, it was Joanna's. Not Joanna. Something sharper. Evelyn's hand trembled. She zoomed in. The girl's shoulder had a small tattoo, barely healed, scrawled in shaky block letters. "Jane." Evelyn dropped the phone and whispered, "They're alive, both of them." Upstairs, Joanna was folding laundry in the hallway when she heard a voice call her name. Not Vashti, not Richard. "Evelyn, come." She entered the room and saw Evelyn holding a printout in her hand. Joanna stepped forward. "This girl?" Evelyn said. "Look at her face." Joanna looked. Her heart stopped. It was like looking in a cracked mirror. Same nose. Same jaw. Same small scar under the right eyebrow. "She looks like me." "She doesn't just look like you," Evelyn whispered. "She's you. Or part of you." "What do you mean?" Evelyn picked up a small black notebook from her drawer. "My son had twins," she said. "He named the first child Joanna. He told me once, he didn't care who came first. They were two halves of the same light." Joanna's hands shook. "I remember that name. I've heard it before. My mother, my adopted one, she used to call the wind sometimes. She would say, 'Jane, wherever you are, be safe.'" "Do you remember her full name?" "No. She died when I was 6. After that, I stayed with Grace, until she sold me." Evelyn's voice was steady. "This girl, this Jane, she's in Oberlin police station." Joanna's eyes widened. "We have to go get her." Evelyn stared at her. "Not yet. We must move quietly. If Richard and Vashti find out, they'll bury this like they buried your past." Joanna clutched the photo. Her face, her other self, looked back at her with street fire in her eyes. "I have a sister." Evelyn nodded. "And if we find her, they'll never be able to silence us again." In Oberlin police station, Jane sat on the floor of the holding cell, arms crossed, legs stretched. She'd fought off 2 bullies already. One tried to steal her puff-puff. The other touched her scarf. They both regretted it. A young female officer passed by and looked at her with pity. "You know, you look like someone I saw on the news once," she said. Jane rolled her eyes. "Everyone says that. I'm not Beyoncé." "No," the officer said. "Someone younger. Richer. Cleaner." Jane scoffed. "That's not me. I'm just Jane." "Where are your parents?" Jane looked up. "Dead. Or cowards." The officer smiled faintly. "One day, someone will come for you." Jane looked away. Too late. But she couldn't stop thinking about something. That night, during the raid, she had dropped a small wallet. And it was a note. A very old note. "To my baby girls, Joanna and Jane. You are loved. No matter what happens, you are loved." Jane had carried it for years. Faded. Torn. But she refused to throw it away. She didn't remember where it came from. But part of her always believed someone was looking for her. Back in her room, Joanna stared at the mirror. She tried to imagine the girl in the photo speaking. What would she say? Would she be kind? Would she be angry? Would she want to know Joanna too? She pressed her fingers to the glass. "I'll find you," she whispered. "I promise." At Oberlin Station, Jane sat at the corner, watching the world go by. When Alfred arrived, she didn't even look up. 3 days later, a man in a gray suit came into the Carter mansion. Evelyn met him in the garden. "I need you to go to Oberland," she said. "There's a girl in custody. Her name is Jane." The man, Mr. Alfred, Evelyn's long-trusted personal assistant, raised a brow. "Another one?" "She's mine," Evelyn said softly. "Or rather, Daniel's." Alfred nodded. "Do you want her brought here?" "No. Just confirm. Talk to her. Then report back. Quietly." Alfred nodded and left. As tired of random adults asking questions they didn't care about. He crouched beside her. "You're Jane?" "No," she said flatly. He smiled. "You have a funny face for a liar." She blinked. "I'm not here to arrest you. I'm here because someone believes in you." She looked at him. "Why?" "Because you have a sister." Jane's eyes hardened. "I don't have anything." Alfred handed her a photo. She looked, and for the first time in years, she froze. The girl in the photo, clean hair, calm eyes, wearing a pale blue dress, standing beside an older woman. Joanna. She blinked. The scar under the brow, the same one she had. Alfred whispered, "She's looking for you." Jane looked away. "No one's looking for me." "She is." He pulled something from his pocket. A folded note. Jane's breath hitched. "Her note? How did you?" "She carried the other half," Alfred said. "This is yours." Jane's lip quivered, and for the first time in a long, long time, a tear slid down her cheek. Back in Lecky, Joanna stood by the gate, staring at the road. Evelyn came beside her. "She's coming," Evelyn said. Joanna turned, eyes wide. She agreed. She asked for one thing first. "What?" "Your name." Joanna smiled faintly. She still remembers. Evelyn placed her hand on Joanna's shoulder. "The day you two stand together, Richard and Vashti will finally know what fear looks like." "You dropped this," she said calmly. Vashti's face went blank. Jane leaned close. "I know what you've been doing." Then she smiled sweetly. "Your time is ticking." And she walked out. The day started with silence. Not the usual quiet of polished tiles and humming air conditioners. This silence was thick, heavy. It moved through the Carter mansion like smoke before a fire. Joanna stood by the window in a crisp white blouse and black skirt. Her hair was neatly packed, her lips pressed tight. She stared at the garden, where workers trimmed hedges under the watchful eye of nobody. Nobody but her. She was no longer just the maid. Not anymore. Behind her, Jane adjusted her jacket, black denim, boots, and a confidence that didn't need permission. "You sure you're ready for this?" she asked. Joanna turned. "Are you?" Jane smirked. "Born ready." Downstairs, in the dining room, Richard was pouring himself a cup of coffee. Vashti adjusted her gold necklace in the mirror. They looked normal. But their kingdom was about to fall. At exactly 9 a.m., Mrs. Evelyn Carter stepped out of her room dressed in royal blue ochre, her scarf wrapped tightly, her eyes fierce. No walking stick. No help. Her heels tapped the floor like a war drum. The household staff froze. Blessing gasped. One of the drivers dropped his car keys. The gardener looked up as if witnessing resurrection. Evelyn didn't slow. She passed the corridor where Richard stood holding his cup. His mouth opened, but no words came. She simply said, "Boardroom? Now." He obeyed. The Carter Holdings boardroom smelled of lavender, ink, and expensive betrayal. Directors sat in confusion. Evelyn's seat, empty for over a year, now stood upright. She entered first. Heads turned. Phones slipped from hands. Whispers passed through the room like current. "Is that?" She's walking, I thought. Behind her came Joanna and Jane. Two versions of the same girl. One in white, one in black. One soft, one sharp. One message, we're not afraid anymore. Richard entered last, flustered. Vashti followed, her heels clicking like guilt. Evelyn stood at the head of the table. Measured. My name is Mrs. Evelyn Carter, she began. Some of you thought I was dead. Others hoped I was. Silence. I've been absent, yes. But not asleep. My son Daniel's death left a wound I thought time would close. Instead, it was reopened by lies, theft, and treachery in this very room. She turned slowly toward Richard. My younger son. Richard flinched but said nothing. Evelyn nodded toward Joanna and Jane. These are Daniel's daughters, Joanna and Jane Carter. The heirs you all claimed no longer existed. Separated by deceit. Raised in darkness. But found by light. A murmur rippled through the table. Someone removed their glasses. Another director faintly gasped. I present to you not just blood, but proof. Joanna stepped forward and laid the matched letter halves on the table. Jane followed with a file, Daniel Carter's last letter to the board, hidden until now, found in his private safe. The document named Joanna and Jane as joint heirs in the event of his and his wife's passing. Evelyn slammed it down. Legally signed. Dated. Stamped. Richard stood. This is insane. Jane cut in. What's insane is drugging your mother so she forgets her name. What's insane is letting your wife poison her tea every day like it's routine. Guess. Vashti stood up, red-faced. You can't prove that. Joanna raised the bottle. We can. Lab tested. Traces of memory-reducing herbs and tranquilizers. Imported illegally. We have Blessing's signed statement and the delivery receipt from Betagri. Vashti tried to lunge forward, but Jane stepped in front of Joanna. Try it, Jane said. I grew up with boys who killed for less than a rice plate. You don't scare me. Vashti froze. Richard tried a softer approach. Mama, please. This is all too fast. Evelyn turned sharply. No, Richard. What was too fast was how quickly you erased your brother's memory. His name. His legacy. How quickly you sat in his seat, wore his suit, spent his money. Her voice cracked with fury. You wanted to inherit what you did not build. I was protecting the family. You were protecting yourself. And now the family protects itself from you. She turned to the board. I hereby revoke all temporary powers granted to Richard Carter. Effective immediately. His access to the company's finances, records, and leadership systems is suspended. Based on what? Richard cried. Evelyn held up a flash drive. Based on recorded conversations, security footage, and written testimony from the woman who cleaned your glass, drove your car, and served your drinks. They heard everything. Joanna stepped forward. I was your maid, she said to Richard. And even then, I was more loyal to this house than you were. Jane added, I was your mistake. The one you thought you erased. But I'm back. And I brought thunder. Security entered the room. Evelyn pointed. Escort Mr. and Mrs. Carter off the premises. Their legal rights will be discussed in court. Richard protested. You'll regret this. No, Evelyn said. You will. The guards guided them out. Vashti yanked her arm away, nearly tripping on her heel. As they reached the door, she turned to Joanna and hissed, You'll never belong here. Joanna met her eyes and replied, I already do. The boardroom exhaled. Directors whispered. Phones buzzed. Papers rustled. But at the head of the table, Evelyn sat down. She smiled faintly. To those of you who supported this family during its darkest hour, we thank you. For those who watched and stayed silent, Redemption is a choice. Today we begin again. She turned to Joanna and Jane. My granddaughters. My future. Joanna placed her hand on Jane's. And Jane didn't flinch. Later that night, the mansion was quiet. Not the false silence from before. This was peace. Evelyn sat on the balcony with both girls, sipping warm tea that didn't taste like poison. I always dreamed of this, she said softly. Daniel's daughters. In the house. Together. Joanna laid her head on her shoulder. Jane stood by the railing, looking out at the glowing city lights. They called me a thief, she said. But I came back as a witness. Evelyn smiled. You came back as a warrior. Joanna added, and I came back as the truth. The wind moved through the trees gently. And in that moment, the Carter house was no longer a cage of secrets. It was home. The front gates of the Carter mansion opened wide. But this time, it wasn't for lawyers, board members, or gossiping drivers. It was for Joanna Carter and Jane Carter, daughters of Daniel, granddaughters of Evelyn, and symbols of a legacy restored. The city was watching now. It began with a press release. Simple. Direct. Signed by Mrs. Evelyn Carter, it read, After a season of silence and strategic betrayal, the Carter family acknowledges the return of its rightful heirs, Joanna and Jane Carter, twin daughters of the late Daniel and Amelia Carter. As of this day, Joanna Carter assumes the role of executive trainee at Carter Holdings, while Jane Carter will head the launch of the Carter Foundation for Forgotten Girls, an initiative rooted in healing and justice for vulnerable youth. Social media lit up within hours. Wait, they were twins? Daniel Carter had daughters? Didn't they both die in the crash? That street girl, she's a Carter? Lagos was buzzing. The story wasn't just unexpected, it was cinematic. From maid and street girl to heiresses? It didn't sound real, but it was. Joanna's first day as executive trainee. The Carter Holdings skyscraper in Victoria Island shimmered under the morning sun. Sleek, proud, impenetrable. Joanna stepped out of the black SUV wearing a navy blue power suit with silver earrings Evelyn had passed down from her own youth. Her hair was wrapped in a modern bun, and her eyes, still unsure but holding fire, scanned the building. Alfred, Evelyn's personal assistant, walked beside her. Are you nervous? He asked gently. Yes, she admitted. He smiled. Good. Only fools walk into power like it's owed. You're ready. Inside the lobby, employees paused mid-walk. Conversations halted. She looks like him, one whispered. Daniel, another breathed. Joanna entered the elevator, heart pounding. As the doors closed, her reflection stared back, familiar, but new. She was given a private office on the 11th floor. Glass walls. Mahogany desk. A nameplate already waiting. Joanna Carter, executive trainee. For a while, she just stood there, breathing. Her father's name was on the building. Her grandmother's hands built the empire. Now hers were ready to carry it forward. But not just with figures and charts. With vision. By noon, Joanna had attended 2 meetings, greeted 20 employees, and received 30 welcome emails. But the most important one came from her grandmother. Well done today. You walk like your mother, quiet, but unshakable. Don't let the suits confuse you. Power is not in the tie, it's in the truth. Love, Nana. Joanna smiled. That was all the approval she needed. Meanwhile in Oblin, Jane stood outside a dusty government building in cargo pants and a Carter Foundation t-shirt. Her hair was braided tightly, her expression hard but alive. The Carter Foundation for Forgotten Girls had officially opened that morning. And Jane had personally chosen their first project location, the streets she grew up on. She didn't want to start in Lekki or Six. She wanted to start in the dirt. That was the only way to keep it real. Inside the makeshift hall, over 60 girls, ages 7 to 17, sat on plastic chairs, listening as Jane spoke into a wired microphone. I know what it feels like to eat leftovers from someone's table or sleep under bridge shade while buses pass above you, she said. I know what it's like to lose your name. The girls watched her, some wide-eyed, others guarded. But let me tell you something, she continued. Your name isn't in a birth certificate. It's in your breath. As long as you're breathing, your story isn't finished. Some clapped. A few cried. All listened. Later that evening, Jane returned to the mansion and found Joanna seated on the balcony, sipping ginger tea. Joanna looked up. How was Opalend? Jane dropped into the seat beside her. Sweaty, but perfect. They smiled. I saw our names trending today, Jane said. I know, Joanna replied. Someone called us the Carter twins of Thunder and Grace. Jane laughed. I'll take Thunder. Joanna nodded. I'll hold Grace. Silence followed, but it was the good kind. The kind that only sisters know. Evelyn's private celebration. That night, in the private garden, Evelyn lit 2 candles under the jacaranda tree. This tree was planted when your father was born, she told them. Now, I light these for him and for your mother. Joanna placed a rose at the tree's base. Jane poured water from a calabash. Evelyn touched both girls' shoulders. This is not the end of the journey, she said. It's the beginning of the rebirth. You are the Carter legacy now, not because of wealth, but because you survived what should have destroyed you. Joanna whispered, We're still learning. And you will learn. But never forget where you came from. Jane added quietly, Never again. Elsewhere in Lagos, Richard sat in a small, airless apartment in Yaba, sipping beer from a plastic cup. Vashti paced in front of the window, her wig slightly crooked, her gold earrings missing. They embarrassed us, she muttered. In front of everyone. Richard didn't reply. Vashti turned sharply. Say something. Richard stared at the wall. They weren't supposed to win. But they did, Vashti hissed. He clenched his jaw. Not for long. Vashti narrowed her eyes. You still have something in motion? Richard's fingers drummed the table. Elsewhere in Lagos, Richard sat in a small, airless apartment in Yaba, sipping beer from a plastic cup. Vashti paced in front of the window, her wig slightly crooked, her gold earrings missing. They embarrassed us, she muttered. In front of everyone. Richard didn't reply. Vashti turned sharply. Say something. Richard stared at the wall. They weren't supposed to win. But they did, Vashti hissed. He clenched his jaw. Not for long. Vashti narrowed her eyes. You still have something in motion? Richard's fingers drummed the table. Back at the mansion, Joanna opened a notebook her father once wrote in. She read one of the last pages he ever penned. One day, they'll say you came from nothing. Let them. It makes the story better when you prove them wrong. She underlined it with a pen. Jane leaned on the doorway, arms folded. You coming? Joanna looked up. Where to? New life, Jane said. It doesn't wait. Joanna smiled, stood, and followed. The black SUV moved slowly through the dusty, cracked streets of Makoko, Lagos. Children ran barefoot beside the car, shouting and laughing. Market women paused over pepper and augury to squint at the tinted windows. A group of Okada riders argued loudly by a corner kiosk, but even they turned when the vehicle pulled up in front of a crumbling compound with fading yellow walls and rusted iron gates. Inside the car, Joanna Carter took a deep breath. She looked at her sister, Jane, who was dressed in her signature black jeans and t-shirt, sunglasses hanging from the collar. You sure you're okay? Joanna asked. Jane cracked her knuckles. "I've waited 10 years to come back here." The gate creaked as they pushed it open. The compound was smaller than Joanna remembered, shabbier too. The old mango tree still stood in the middle, though the bench beneath it was broken. Plastic buckets littered the corner. A rusted stove sat near the wall. From inside the house came shouting. "And you think you can eat beans and egg and not wash my slippers? God punish you!" Joanna froze. She knew that voice. So did Jane. Then, from the open doorway, Grace appeared, older now, heavier, her wrapper sagging on one hip, a broken comb in her hand. Behind her, a young girl of about 10 crouched near a bowl of Gary, her cheeks wet with tears. Grace turned and saw them. Her lips parted, but no words came. Jane stepped forward. "Don't recognize me, Grace?" The comb fell from Grace's hand. "Jane." Surprise. Joanna followed slowly, her eyes sweeping over the compound, the window she used to sleep beside, the crack in the wall that dripped during rainy season. Grace blinked, unsure if she was dreaming or dying. You both look fed? But human?" Jane snapped. "Yeah, life's funny like that." From behind the curtain, Festus emerged, balding, a tattered singlet over his belly. He paused, mid-yawn, then froze when he saw Joanna. "God in heaven." "No," Joanna said. "It's just me. The child you called witch." Grace recovered quickly, folding her arms. "What do you want here?" "You're not welcome." Joanna's voice didn't shake. "We're not here for welcome. We're here for closure." Jane stepped beside her. "And maybe a few answers." Inside, the house smelled of old smoke, damp clothes, and fried onions. The girls sat on the edge of the wooden chair they once knelt by. Joanna's gaze drifted to the ceiling, still leaking. Jane leaned back like she owned the place. Grace eyed them cautiously. "So what, you're rich now? Come to show off?" "No," Joanna said. "We came to show you something else." She pulled a thick brown envelope from her bag and dropped it on the table. Inside are photos, hospital bills, school forms, tears, lies. Grace hesitated before picking it up. She flipped through the photos, Jane with bruised elbows, Joanna fetching water at dawn, Jane kneeling outside in the rain, Joanna holding her stomach in hunger. "This is what you did," Joanna said quietly. Festus rubbed his head. "We took you in. We fed you. You sold me." Joanna shouted. "To strangers. You didn't feed me, you starved me. You blamed me for things I didn't do. You beat me for breathing." Jane added, "You lied about our mother. You told her we died." Grace's face twitched. "I didn't. We found her," Jane cut in. "Alive. In Ijora. Half dead from grief. She lost her mind when you told her her babies were gone." Joanna's voice trembled. "You stole years from us." Grace's eyes darted, looking for something to hold on to. "But I was trying to protect my marriage," Festus said. "Festus," Jane said, turning to him. "What did you say?" The man shifted. "I just thought the child was cursed. Strange things kept happening. Goats dying. Power cutting off when she walked in. Those are called coincidences, not curses," Joanna said. "And you chose superstition over a child." She stood. "But this isn't revenge. It's release." Jane also stood. "You won't see us again. This is the last page." Joanna stepped toward the small girl cowering by the door. She knelt beside her. "What's your name?" The girl sniffled. "Blessing." Joanna looked into her eyes. "You're not a curse. You're a gift." Then she turned, grabbed Jane's hand, and they walked out. Outside, the sun was sharp and honest. As they climbed into the SUV, Joanna's hands shook. Jane leaned over. "You okay?" Joanna nodded. I just needed her to see what survival looks like. They drove off. No goodbyes. Back at the Carter mansion, Evelyn watched the girls enter the house. She saw it in their faces. Something had shifted. She met them at the door. How was it? Joanna exhaled. Necessary. Jane added, done. Evelyn nodded and held their hands. But, because it's time. Time for what? Joanna asked. Evelyn smiled. To tell the world who you really are. The Carter family interview, live on Channel's TV. Joanna sat in a sea blue gown, her makeup light, her hair in soft curls. Jane wore a tailored jumpsuit with heels and hoop earrings. Evelyn sat between them, regal in burgundy. The host smiled. Good evening, Nigeria. Today, we have a story unlike any we've ever told. What followed was more than just an interview. It was a resurrection. Joanna told her story. Jane added the missing pieces. Evelyn wept when she spoke of Daniel. They spoke of betrayal, hope, truth, survival. By the end, Nigeria was crying with them. Reactions flooded in. Twitter. Just watched Joanna and Jane's interview. From street to CEO and activist? My God. This country has stories. Instagram. They called her a witch. She came back a queen. Radio stations. These girls, they're what Nigeria needs right now. Fire and healing. The Nation newspaper. Carter twins rewrite legacy, one truth at a time. 1 week later, a letter arrives. From a correctional center in Ilorin. The envelope was clean, the handwriting shaky. Joanna opened it. Dear Joanna and Jane, I watched your interview. I cried. I'm in here because I stole food from my sister. I always thought no one like us made it out. But you did. Thank you for showing me that broken things can rise again. Peace, age 16. Jane folded the letter carefully. That's why we tell our story. Joanna nodded. Not to brag, but to bless. Later that night, they stood on the mansion's rooftop, looking over Lagos. Jane whispered, You think Dad can see us? Joanna looked up at the stars. I think he's proud. And for the first time, neither girl felt lost. They had come full circle. From Makoko to Lekki. From pain to purpose. From forgotten to forever written. The ballroom of the Lagos Continental Hotel sparkled like a sky full of chandeliers. Rows of crystal lights dangled from the ceiling. Velvet curtains framed every marble wall. The air hummed with live violin music, soft laughter, and the clinking of wine glasses. Tonight wasn't just another charity gala. It was Joanna and Jane Carter's public debut. Not as orphans. Not as survivors. But as heirs of one of Lagos' most powerful legacies. The setup. Weeks of preparation had gone into the Carter Foundation's first official gala. Evelyn spared no detail. The theme was From Ashes to Anchors, a tribute to every girl who had been forgotten, abused, or erased, but found her way back to the surface. Guests poured in, politicians, business moguls, Nollywood stars, journalists, and social advocates. Men wore sleek tuxedos, women dazzled in gowns that shimmered like oceans. But when Joanna and Jane stepped onto the red carpet, everything stopped. Joanna wore a royal blue fitted gown with silver threadwork that kissed the floor. Jane stunned in a sharp emerald suit with clean-cut lines and gold cuffs. Their hair was pulled back in matching braided buns, and their eyes, brave and unblinking, told a story no camera could capture. Flashes exploded. Reporters jostled. Joanna, over here. Jane, one smile for the Tribune. How does it feel to go from Makoko to the elite? Joanna simply said, We're not here to impress. We're here to invest. Jane added, in lives. In futures. In truth. Inside the ballroom, Every table was named after a different forgotten girl who had once lived on the streets. Beside each plate sat a story card, a brief bio, a photograph, and a sentence that ended with, "She is not invisible." As guests sat, waiters floated by with peppered snails, plantain canapes, and wine imported from Cape Town. The MC took the stage, a cheerful voice with just enough gravity. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight is about more than suits and sequins. It's about second chances." Then came the moment everyone had waited for. Please welcome Miss Joanna Carter and Miss Jane Carter. The room erupted in applause. Joanna stepped up to the mic, her heart thudding. "I used to think silence was safety," she began. "That if I stayed quiet I would be spared. But silence almost erased me. And girls like me." The room hushed. "Tonight, we're not just raising money. We're raising girls. Out of gutters. Out of grief. Into greatness." Jane stepped beside her. "And let me say this, you don't have to be born rich to walk like royalty. We're not just Carters by blood. We're queens by fire." The applause was thunderous. Evelyn's private toast. Evelyn raised her champagne flute. "To the past that tried to break us. To the present we're shaping. And to the girls who will walk taller because we told the truth." A soft chorus of "Hear, hear." But then, a commotion at the entrance. The music stopped. Heads turned. A man stood by the door, aged, tall, with silver hair and dark sunglasses. Behind him, a nervous woman in a yellow dress held a dusty manila envelope. Evelyn's face paled. Jane's eyes narrowed. "Who is that?" Joanna froze. "That looks like the doctor. From when Nana was sick." The man stepped forward. "My name is Dr. Anthony Craig. I'm not here to ruin your night. But I have a confession." The ballroom fell into a stunned silence. Dr. Craig walked to the stage. "I was the doctor who ran the DNA test between Joanna and Mrs. Evelyn Carter." Joanna tensed. Jane gripped her chair. "What I didn't say is that someone tried to bribe me to change the results." The room gasped. He continued, "I refused. But then I received a letter. From your late mother." Evelyn's voice cracked. "From Amelia?" "Yes. It was hidden in a medical file your mother had left years ago. She suspected, long before the accident, that something was wrong with her pregnancy. That she was having twins." He turned to Joanna and Jane. "That envelope your mother left me had 2 hospital tags. 2 footprints." He handed it to Evelyn. The old woman opened it with trembling fingers. Inside, 2 tiny inked footprints. One labeled Baby A, the other Baby B. "Your mother knew," Dr. Craig said softly. "She knew they'd try to separate you. She told me, if anything ever happened to her, and you survived, that I must one day return the truth." The room reacts. Tears rolled down Evelyn's face. Jane wiped her own. "I always wondered," she whispered, "why I kept dreaming of another girl. A mirror face I'd never met." Joanna held her hand. "You weren't dreaming. You were remembering." Dr. Craig took one more step. "Miss Carter." "Joanna, I believe your baby is your baby B. I can now officially confirm you are biological twins." The room applauded, softly at first, then louder, then standing. It was as though all of Lagos was clapping for every girl who had ever been silenced. Later that night, back at the mansion, under the moonlit gazebo, Evelyn held the 2 footprints in her hand. "My son gave me a legacy," she said. "But you too? You gave it breath again." Joanna asked, "Nana, are you okay with the world knowing?" Evelyn smiled. "Let the world know. Let them write headlines. What matters is, I didn't lose you. Either of you." Jane leaned her head on Joanna's shoulder. Joanna whispered, "We were never apart. Just misplaced. Final scene. Outside the gates of the gala, a young girl sat on the curb, holding a stolen program from the event. She traced the names Joanna and Jane with her finger, then looked up at the gate and whispered, "Someday, I'll walk in through the front door too." The camera pans upward, toward the night sky, toward the stars that once hid Joanna and Jane, now shining so brightly they cannot be ignored. 3 months later, the sun was rising over Lagos Lagoon, painting the waters in gold. Boats moved like whispers on the horizon, and seagulls called out to a city already awake. But the Carter mansion wasn't stirring from sleep. It was humming with preparation. Today wasn't just any day. It was the inauguration of the Carter Learning and Healing Center, a grand institute dedicated to rehabilitating street girls, educating displaced children, and honoring forgotten voices. And at its heart were 2 names engraved on the building's glass entrance: Joanna and Jane Carter. Inside the dressing room, Joanna adjusted her silk scarf. Her hair was in soft waves, and her white jumpsuit flowed like water. She took a slow breath in front of the mirror. Behind her, Jane was already dressed, an olive suit with a gold lapel pin. Her earrings glinted like stars. "You ready for the speech of your life?" Jane asked, tapping her foot like a boxer before a match. Joanna smiled faintly. "I've written it 20 times and still feel like I'm writing it for the first time." Jane folded her arms. "You're not. You're writing it for the last time. To seal it." Joanna turned. "And you?" "I'm just waiting for the fireworks." Jane grinned. "Literal ones." "I snuck in a surprise." The stage. A grand canopy covered the open-air stage near the new center. Rows of white chairs were set before it, occupied by students, street survivors, politicians, international guests, and press crews from BBC Africa, Arise TV, and Al Jazeera. Evelyn Carter sat front row in emerald green lace, holding a program with pride. Beside her sat Blessing, the young girl once seen weeping in Grace's compound, now radiant in her Carter Scholarship uniform. Alfred adjusted the mic as Lagos Commissioner for Youth gave a warm introduction. Then came the name that needed no build-up. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Miss Joanna Carter." The speech. Joanna stepped forward. The air stilled. A sea of faces looked up. Cameras rolled. But her eyes sought out one thing: Jane, standing just behind the curtain, nodding once. Then Joanna began. "Once upon a time, I was a girl they called a witch. I was 10 years old, hungry, silent, dust on my feet, shame in my breath. I lived in the shadows of those who were supposed to love me. But here's the thing about shadows: they don't exist without light." The crowd leaned in. "Today, I'm standing in that light, not just for myself, but for every girl who was told she didn't belong. We are not curses. We are not mistakes. We are the bridges between pain and purpose." Applause rippled. This center behind me? It's not just a building. It's proof. Proof that a street girl can become a leader. That a forgotten child can write her own future. That healing is possible when truth is spoken. And today, we speak it fully. Jane stepped beside her now. "I once lived under a bridge. Now I stand over one. Not because the world gave me space, but because I fought for it. And now, I'm here to help others cross too." The crowd stood, applauding. Reporters wiped their eyes. Girls in the front row clapped until their palms turned red. Then came the moment that changed the room forever. The surprise reunion. As Joanna and Jane bowed, Evelyn slowly rose to the mic. "I'm not here to speak long," she began. "I'm here to say thank you to my granddaughters who restored a broken name." Then she turned to a man stepping quietly from backstage. "My son has something to say too." The crowd murmured. Joanna's mouth dropped. A man walked forward, gray-bearded, thin, eyes tired but burning with truth. It was Festus, but different. He looked healed, as though regret had carved something new into him. Joanna stepped back, stunned. Jane stiffened. He took the mic. I was the man who turned away from light. I believed lies. I helped bury innocence. I failed my daughter. But God refused to let me rest. When I saw your interview, Joanna, I wept like a child. I came here today not to speak, but to ask for forgiveness. Silence. Joanna's throat tightened. Jane folded her arms, but didn't move. Festus looked at both of them. I can't undo what I broke, but I can build something new. If you let me. The crowd held its breath. Joanna stepped forward. Festus, she said slowly, you weren't a father. Not then. He nodded, ashamed. But if you're ready to become one now, maybe we can start small. She stretched out her hand. Festus choked, then slowly took it. Jane didn't speak, but she stepped beside Joanna and gave Festus a single nod. It was enough, for now. The audience erupted, not with noise, but with hope. Later that night, the fireworks. Back at the Carter mansion, the after-party continued in the rooftop garden. A DJ spun slow jazz. Girls from the new foundation danced barefoot on the grass. Jane handed out coconut drinks like a festival queen. Joanna stood near Evelyn, watching the lights of the city below. Today felt final, Joanna said softly. Evelyn smiled. Final chapters make room for new books. Joanna turned. What now? Jane popped up beside them. Now, we celebrate. Starting with this. She pointed upward. The sky exploded into light. Fireworks that painted the night with color. Blue, gold, silver, like pages turning in the heavens. Cheers filled the garden. One girl shouted, "That's what freedom looks like." Joanna laughed. For the first time in years, truly. Then Jane raised a toast. To every girl who was lost and found herself. May we never go missing again.